Welcome to Bloom Today. We have a strengthening show for you. We're going to be talking about becoming an ex-victim.
Hi, I'm Paula Wallace, president of Bloom in the Dark, and this is
Ginny Paula, the single-handed serenity coach. Welcome to Bloom Today, where we talk about internal and external brokenness and how you can heal,
so that you can use the fertilizer of your past to bloom today. Hey everybody, today we are talking about becoming an ex-victim, and we love the ex-victim thing so much because I wear a shirt that says ex-victim every single show.
I thought you were going to say day there for a second.
Not quite. I do wear other clothes sometimes.
We don't stop being an ex-victim no matter what clothes we're wearing. And just because I'm not wearing an ex-victim t-shirt doesn't mean that I'm not an ex-victim.
Because you are an ex-victim, but you let me wear it so I don't have to worry about wardrobe ideas when it comes to
There are benefits to these things, yes.
But I do love the fact that when I wear it, I can say, been there, done that, got the t-shirt.
Exactly.
Because that is an awesome thing. And there's a lot of questions as to what an ex-victim is or what it means. Mm-hmm. And we're just saying we're identifying where we've been and that we're not there anymore. So
praise God for that.
Isn't that amazing? And like as an ex-wife, ex-wife just says you were a wife and now you're not. Mm-hmm. So ex-victim says I was a victim. I own it. I acknowledge it. I'm not in denial about it. But I'm not one anymore. Mm-hmm. I have worked for healing and growth and change so that I can then use that part of my past, the fertilizer of our past, as we call it.
Yes.
Actually use that to help other people. Mm-hmm. So then I'm an ex-victim who can have that as a badge of honor that what Satan tried to do to destroy me didn't work. Mm-hmm. And that I'm not one anymore, and I'm moving into the blooming part of the discussion.
Or of our story, right? We don't have to have the shame anymore. There's no shame associated with it for me anymore. No. Yeah, this happened. And yes, I put myself in some interesting situations. And yes, I actually, in my case, I took on the identity of victim after a while. It just became something that I was, something that I expected. And so I sort of allowed it to continue. Every work situation that I was in, every friendship, every romantic relationship, I found some way to find myself as the victim. I just could not stand up for myself. So instead, I just said, well, here I am again, being hurt. Here I am again, under someone else's thumb. Here I am again. And I didn't even consider speaking up to someone. But because of that, I really identified without using the term victim in my mind. That's not how I saw myself, but that's really what I was and what I saw myself as at the core of it once I finally got some perspective on it later on in life.
When you come out of denial?
Oh, yeah. Yes. The shades of denial, they came off.
And that makes such a difference. And so many times people are so scared of the perpetual victim or being identified with shame. Right. That they stay in denial about the realities of having been a victim.
Right.
And then they're owning the blame and shame of it, and then they're not healing from it. And so recognizing that being a victim is not your fault.
Amen to that.
It's a perpetrator or the person who is doing the harm. It is their fault, their responsibility, but owning the fact that it's a broken place in your life.
Right.
So that you can then take steps towards changing and healing and growing and becoming healthy instead of that brokenness.
Coming out of denial was a big part of that process for me. But then forgiveness also became a big part of that process for me to say, okay, I'm no longer holding everyone accountable for making me the victim. 16 times over. It's not because they weren't guilty. And in my case, sometimes they weren't actually guilty. It was just my perception of things. But there were clear cases of abuse where it's not my fault. But in order to come out of that mindset of victim and letting people take advantage of me continuously, I had to forgive them for what they had done and say, you're on God's hook, not on my hook. I'm leaving it all to Him. And then I could finally walk away from underneath that identity.
Yeah, and I knew what I said to two people who had really, really, really hurt me is I said, I'm not going to let the choices you're making that cause damage, I'm not going to let those choices destroy my life. I have the choice to separate myself from the damage that you have caused. And forgiveness was the way I created that boundary. Mm-hmm. And I took the power of the harm they had caused out of the mix. I let it go. And that's a very difficult process, much easier said than done.
Right.
But I let it go. And then I started focusing on, now that I'm free of that, I need to focus on my healing, my growth, renewing my mind, changing, taking off the victim tattoo that was on my forehead that every perpetrator within whatever radius was constantly homing in on, she's a victim, let's hurt her. Because you can actually perpetuate this victimization and
absolutely,
and make it worse and keep attracting
not consciously, but
not
actually
deliberately.
Subconsciously. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can have those. If you are still broken and operating under that, you're going to have tendencies and behaviors that.
Well, and the shame is
victims.
Visible. People will notice the shame, and then the shame lets them know you're weak or broken or hurting. And then some people look for that and then take advantage,
unfortunately,
of hurting that. So the cool thing is we get to actually talk about 3 of the major strategies that we use in changing from being a victim to
an ex-victim.
And everybody can use these strategies. They are universal. They're not just our secret formulas, though we use them like they're our secret.
Well, we don't want to keep them a secret. That's why we're sharing them with the world. But the first one is forgiveness, like we've been talking about, that we don't have to continue to have the past pain and abuse continue to hurt us every day, rehashing that. We can give that back to God and say, not on my watch anymore, as you were saying. I'm not going to let the pain from the past continue to hurt me.
Right, and realizing that forgiveness does not mean I have to be in relationship with the people hurting me.
Right.
Like forgiveness can mean that I let them off the hook. I separate myself from them, from the damage and harm, and give them to God. I release my bitterness, my anger about it.
Right.
I let go of all that.
But I can also protect myself from further abuse. I can put the right boundaries between us, and we don't have to be in close relationship, and I don't have to trust you either.
No. And it may not be safe to have any contact with. I may not ever tell that person that I forgive them or write them a letter or do anything. In fact, in my case, there has not been a way to contact a whole lot of the people who were perpetrators in my life.
Right.
But where I needed to release that was in my heart, was in my mind, was in following the forgiveness principles where Jesus said in the Lord's Prayer even, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And I need plenty of forgiveness, so focusing on letting go, on giving them their space so that I can then focus on what's good for me, what's healing for me, and change me.
Exactly. And the second strategy that we so secretly love to employ is worship. And bringing God into the equation. Now that I've put the forgiveness and I've put that at the foot of the cross, then I ask God to come into this place with me, because Ephesians 3:14-17 says, "For this reason I kneel before the Father. I pray that out of His glorious riches He may strengthen you with power through His Spirit in your inner being, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith." And we actually get this strength from the Holy Spirit, from just the love that we can receive from God. And worship is one of the best ways to open our hearts and receive that from Him.
Right, and to be saturated. Worship, music as a whole affects your soul. It affects your spirit, your emotions. And sometimes when I didn't know anything else to do because I was so broken and in such a dark place, I would turn worship on a loop. And worship can be anything that's glorifying God, bringing truth and life and growth into us. But in music, so much Christian music that feeds my spirit and my soul and just shifts my perspective. You know, In the Eye of the Storm is talking about being in that dramatic place of brokenness. Or
but
just
He remains in control, right?
Right. There's just so many songs. If you Google worship, that's going to give you strength. There's so much out there.
What I love is it reminds me how God is so big and I am so small, but His love is so big and He's constantly trying to give that to me, that in that place, it's okay. You still are in every detail of my life. That's incredible. So His strength is always available for me every single moment. And that's one of the wonderful things that I love to receive from him in that time of worship.
Yeah, that makes such a difference for me. But then as the healing process continues, and obviously different levels of healing, we're many times rotating through all of this simultaneously.
Absolutely.
But the giving back, the taking that brokenness and that healing and that worship and that growth and actually sharing it with others, sharing it with other people that are maybe a little further back in that same journey of healing or growth, extending it through sponsoring like we do in Celebrate Recovery. Extending that hope and growth through storytelling, or through, in your case, writing a book, through this television show. We're getting to
give
to
back,
actively share that hope and life with others. Yeah. But it's amazing how much healing I've gotten through the process of sharing and loving on and giving in relation to this.
Yeah, there's something that happens when we go from feeling like a powerless victim to all of a sudden recognizing that we have a purpose, that we have something that we can give. And it's, again, this idea of strength, that there is something within us that is able to give back, to bloom out. And if we are connected with the Father, like the vine, that he does work through us, and we can be a part of his process, of his healing process with others as well. And it redeems some of the things that we've been through.
And it counteracts self-pity.
Oh, yes.
Because then I'm not in the poor me victim self-pity party, because it is poor me a lot of times when there's deep pain and deep brokenness. Absolutely. And whether it's health issues or emotional issues or mental issues or destructive flashbacks or whatever range of the spectrum it is so incredible that when you're sitting there giving to others, your focus is off of your own brokenness and needs and onto giving life and sharing life with somebody else. Right. It's like an antidote.
Right.
And it makes life so much better.
It does make life so much better. And a lot of times I preach to myself when I'm preaching to other people as well. So I get to receive that too. And if you want to learn more about this topic, you can go to our website, bloomtodaytv.com, and you can download our coaching tool. And that's just a couple worksheets where we're going over the lesson, but we are also helping you to take baby steps. How does this apply to your life, and what can you do to get from taking one more step to becoming an ex-victim? Again, bloomtodaytv.com is where you can download that coaching tool.
So, Ginny, can you read the ex-victim poem that's in the Bloom in the Dark book?
I would be happy to read the ex-victim poem. I don't want to admit I'm a victim. Tainted by abuse, feeling irrational fear and shame. Defensive and jaded. Frigid, stoic, rude. Rejecting before I get rejected. I don't want to admit I'm a victim who is too weak to get away, to fight, to stop the pain. I stand up to the bully who killed my innocence, who massacred my soul. I don't want to be the victim, making mistakes that cause more abuse, broken choices that hurt me. I end up hurting others instead of stopping the pain. I want to stop being a victim, attracting predators, accepting abuse as my due, putting myself at risk, choosing to trust the wrong ones who just pretend to protect. Jesus, help me stop being a victim. You became a victim for me. You hung naked on the cross. You bore my shame. You were bruised for my iniquities. By your stripes, I am healed. I am no longer a victim, forgiven of sin, with wholeness of heart, redeemed, healed, and loved. My innocence restored, my soul saved. I am now an ex-victim. I testify of his grace. I was lost, but am found. I was shattered, but am restored. I am filled with relentless love. I am sharing it with others, just like me. Yay. One of my favorites from the book. But I think that's a great introduction as well to our guest, who is an ex-victim of physical abuse and bullying, and the founder of the Keith Edmonds Foundation.
Isn't that cool?
Keith Edmonds,
come on up.
Come join us in the kitchen.
Do you mind giving him an arm, Jenny?
An arm,
a hand,
an arm,
and
and everything that goes with it. Here we go.